wondering if we may be in the early stages of a rivalry, but by way of comparison, Scottie really burst onto the scene early in 2022. So since the start of that wraparound season, but for all intents and purposes, 2022, on the PGA Tour, Scottie has won 18% of his starts, 13 of 72. Rory's not far behind, a win rate of 16%, 9 of 57. Top 10, Scottie's at 40% with 29. Rory's at 30. Those are both stout numbers. Top 10s, Scottie at 64%. That's Tiger-like. And Rory's at 56%. They both had success outside of the PGA Tour. Scottie winning the Hero twice and the gold medal. And Rory's won 3 times on the DP World Tour in that span. So Scottie's 28. Rory's now 35. But just wondering, where was Rory with his career numbers before turning 29? He'd won 22, so Scottie's at 13, 14 on the PGA Tour, so close. 4 major wins, Scottie with 2, both of those coming at the Masters, and Rory a 4-time European Ryder Cup team member. So, Rolf, let's start with a rivalry. We know just how hard it is to generate any rivalry in this sport. I mean, you think about Jack and Arnie, maybe for a little while, Jack and Tom Watson, briefly in the 70s and mid-70s and early 80s, Tiger and VJ for a year, Tiger and Phil for a little bit, but nothing really took hold. What's your sense of where these two might be headed?
Well, golf, Rich, is probably the most difficult, or one of the most difficult sports by far, to have true rivalries. And in order to have a rivalry, there's one key ingredient that you have to have, and that is a rooting interest. You have to have a rooting interest in order to have a rivalry. And if you take a look at those two players right now, Scottie Scheffler and Rory McIlroy, who's going to root against either one of those players? It's very difficult to do. If you think about, the NFL, let's say, just take that sport, for example. Why do people root for the NFL? They root on their home team. They root because they're betting on the game. Or, in a lot of cases, they root against the other team. Philadelphia and Washington.
Don't come after my Eagles, Rolf.
No, I'm just saying.
They're sitting on top right now.
Yes, they are. There's a built-in rooting interest, though, that we don't have in golf. So we're always trying to create these rivalries, yet the players themselves are hard to root against.
But that said, it looks like Rory, for the first time in a few years, has laid down a marker for Scottie to come get me for a change. 2 wins early in 2025, none for Scottie Scheffler. What do you think's at work?
Two things going on here. The first is it is a big gap between Scheffler and McIlroy right now in terms of the rankings. Rory is trying to close that. The most important part of this, though, is that Rory has now publicly come out and said that this is important to him. It's almost like he's having a restart at the age of 35 years old, and he has put Scheffler in his sights. He has put the #1 world ranking in his sights again. We never heard him talk about Scottie Scheffler at all. But lately, we've been hearing him talk about Scheffler's, on-course management and things like that. We're also hearing Rory talk about the difference between the two of them in their personal lives and maybe the way Scottie does some things compared to the way Rory. Listen to this soundbite right here about the differences between Rory and Scottie.
I don't think Scottie cares about fame at all. But yeah, I think, I've talked about trying to separate the two parts of yourself and trying to be the sort of normal person, but also do what we do. And yeah, sometimes, I've struggled at times where I shoot a bad score and I feel like I'm a bad person, and I shoot a good score and I feel like I'm a good person. I think more than any other sport, it's very hard to separate the two sides of it. But, as I said, I think Scottie does a really good job with that. He gets to the golf course, he's fully committed to doing what he does, and then he seems to have a really good ability to forget about it once he leaves.
Rich, when I look at Rory McIlroy and I think about his career, and I've followed him for so many years, I think maybe in some way Rory has tried to be too many things to too many people over his career. We've seen him, you know, dabble in things like playing soccer when he shouldn't have been doing that, let's say, and getting hurt. You know, he just doesn't have the same mindset away from the course that Scottie Scheffler has. And I think now he is realizing, particularly at this tender age of 35, you know, that he is going to have to make a major commitment and a reset in his thought process and in his game, which he is working on also, a reset with his swing. He's going to have to do that if he has any chance of running down Scottie Scheffler.
Rory's more mercurial, unpredictable, not as reliable, I think, as Scottie Scheffler. Although I think this change in Rory's game, where he's able to win with his B game, shows a level of reliability that may not have been there before. I think Scottie is admired, greatly respected for what he's done and how he conducts himself. For the most part, I think Rory's a little bit more beloved at this point in time. It's just my sense of it. And by the way, when Rory says he's had periods in his life where when he shot a bad score, he's a bad person, Rory, I've said this before, you have no idea. I mean, come on, Rory, what are you talking about? Bad scores, bad person. What are you he has no idea what it's like to play lousy.
The thing is, Rich, if you take a look at the two different aspects of what we're talking about here with Rory, if he makes mistakes when he's saying things which he has done publicly throughout his career, you can make a restatement. You can make a mea culpa. But when you hit a bad golf shot, which is a mistake that Scheffler rarely makes, but is one that Rory makes on a fairly consistent basis, it's hard to get that shot back. And Scottie just hasn't made the mistakes in his career.